Good afternoon, everybody. Let's go ahead and get started. We finished sharing a couple of things. Okay, and let's see. All righty. Hopefully I'm sharing enough that we can get through this. If not, I'll have to fix it. So the first thing I want to do is go over the midterm, which I should have done on Monday, but had some problems with that. Then we're going to talk about homework 5, which I just put out on the GitHub site shortly before this. And then I will hopefully try to clarify some things about functions for Monday. Monday, in retrospect, was not my best lecture. That's what happens when you don't prep. Today, I've prepped a whole lot more. So let's go there. So the test, first of all, let's go through these and see what you could have. The first question, suppose the list variable grades currently has this value, write Python code that would remove all the 9s and only the 9s from the variable, leaving this other list. Didn't need a complete Python program, only enough code to remove the desired values. What I was looking for, most people got this. What I was looking for was a couple of things. One, you used the remove statement rather than pop or delete. You could make pop or delete work, but it would be incredibly ugly. So I looked at that not fondly. If you use the remove to get rid of 9, and secondly, you remembered that the remove statement, the remove method only gets rid of one value, the first instance. And so you put it into a loop, most likely while there was still a 9 in the list. And if you had that, you got full credit. I tried to be generous. Please, on future exams, don't skip sections. I try to be pretty generous on partial credit. If you made a shot at this when I gave you at least 2 out of 4, then later on in the programs, if you at least took a shot, I gave you at least half the points. So, but if you skip it, I have to give you a 0 for that problem. So please, if you can, take a shot at answering the question. So number one, the 2 things I was looking for, there were a number of ways to do it. There are a number of ways to write the code. I was looking for you to use the remove method to get rid of the 9 and to run through and get rid of all of the 9s. Most likely people who did it using the in statement while 9 is in there, keep running and get rid of them. Second one, explain what a magic number is and why it's bad to use one in a Python program. What I was looking for there was it's a number, integer or float, either one, that has no obvious meaning. And, it's not, okay, you could make an argument that if you put 3.14159 in your Python program, I really should know it's pi, okay? Or 6.28, which is tau, which is 2 pi. You could make an argument I should know from context what that is. But we're talking numbers that just have no obvious meaning whatsoever in a Python program. And why it's bad to use one is that it makes your program very difficult to understand. It makes it very difficult to debug. It just causes all kinds of problems. So those were the 2 things I was looking for. Short answer, question 3, considering the following code, num candy is 4, price candy is 0.58, total cost is num candy times price candy. Identify a statement. A statement is a full and complete line of Python. This is a statement. I accepted that. This is a statement. I accepted that. This is a statement. I accepted that. If you named any one of those three as a statement, that is a correct answer, and you got credit for that part. An expression. An expression is a value to be calculated. Now, just this, pardon me, is an expression. And that's what I was looking for. It is perfectly valid. If you said 4 is an expression, you are correct. 4 is an expression. So I would have accepted just saying 4 or 0.58. I was really looking for this as an expression. If you put this, for example, as an expression, I deducted 1 point because that's a statement. That's a full statement, a full line of code. The expression is just this, or again, 0.58 or 4. So on that one, it was worth 4 points. You got 2 points for identifying any one of these three as a statement, and you got to go 2 points for identifying this is an expression, or this is an expression, or this is an expression. If you said this is an expression, this whole thing, I only deducted 1 point. I gave you 1 point for out of the 2 for trying.
Professor.
All right, question 4, short answer. If student name is a string variable with this value, my name misspelled, what happens when you try to correct the spelling error by changing a specific character? The answer here is it is an error. Okay, well, if you got to get full credit, you had to say that's an error. A string is not a list. If it was a list, you could fix the one value, you could change the Y to a U, and you'd be good. But this is not a list, it's a string. And we'll get into it, the technical detail later in the semester, but the bottom line for now is that you cannot change individual elements in a string, individual characters. You can read them, you can look at each value, but you cannot change a specific value in a string. So what I was looking for in question 4 was it's an error. It will throw an error, and if you play with PyCharm, you'd see that fairly quickly. You did not have to explain what the error is in detail. I mean, just short enough to know that it's an error because you can't muck with individual characters in a string. Again, I tried to give you partial credit if you took a good shot at it. Now, the multiple choice and true false. Oh, I'm sorry. The short answer 5. The difference between append and insert. I think just about everybody got that. Append puts the new value at the end of the list, wherever the last one into the list. Append puts it there. Insert, you have to say what index, and it puts it whatever index you tell it. It puts it where you put it. So insert puts it wherever. Append puts it last, and I think pretty much everybody in the class got that one. The multiple choice true false, since that was graded by the system, it was graded by Blackboard. There's no partial credit. You either get 0 or 3, but most people, I think, yeah, most of them. The first multiple choice, which is the following, is not a valid Python variable name. The one that was correct was the one that had the hyphens in it time and time again. You can have underscores in a variable name, but you cannot have hyphens. So it was the hyphens that caused that one to be incorrect. The others were all valid Python variable names, even if by coding rules we wouldn't like them into a 1. They're valid. It's the hyphens that caused this one. 7, true false. The difference between the equals and the double equals is that double equals compares two values for equality, and single equals assigns a value to a variable or constant. That is true. That's exactly what the difference is between equals and single equals. 8, multiple choice. I have a list variable with these values 1 through 12. Those are integers. Suppose I want to get rid of the values 2, 3, 4, and 5 from this list. Which of the following could I use to get rid of them in one statement? You could use the delete statement. You could use del. You'd have to give it the right parameters, but you could use the delete statement to get rid of 2, 3, 4, and 5 all at once. Okay. Just making sure there are no questions. Going on. Number 9. A conditional expression must return what kind of value? A conditional expression is something that's Boolean. It's either true or false. That's the condition. True, false. We're done. Let's see. 10. True or false? If I need to write a loop that prompts the user to input a value and keeps looping until the user enters a valid value, I would use a for each loop because it's most efficient. That is false. You would use a while loop. The reason you would use a while loop is because you have no idea how many times this is going to run. With a for loop, especially a for each, you have to know how many times, either the specific number or the value of whatever this variable is. A while loop keeps running until the user actually enters a valid value. So what you would do in 10 is use a while loop. You would not use a for each. Let's see, 11. If I have Python code, the loop is called a sentinel loop, and Q is the sentinel value, or just the sentinel for short. This is true. Okay, this is the definition I gave you of a sentinel loop that Wednesday before the exam. So 11 is true. 12. Suppose I give you a phrase. What statement would I use to get a list of words containing a list of the words of that phrase? I realized the wording, I said phrase, not individual string, may have confused somebody. If so, I apologize. I didn't think it was that confusing, though. The bottom line, and you could have asked, I think somebody did ask during the test. Yes, that phrase is a single string in Python because it's a bunch of characters in between double quotes. So that is a string. And the way we split a string into a list is by using the split command. And if I don't give any parameter, if there's nothing in this split, technically this split method, since there's nothing here, it splits on white space. So using split will in fact give me a list of the words in this total phrase. So split was the right answer there. 13 was nasty. Sorry, I was running out of it. The Boolean, you either got that one or it went way over your head. That was more of a trick question than anything else. Python in this case is case sensitive. Lowercase f false is not a Boolean value. The Boolean value has uppercase f. Uppercase f false is a Boolean value. Lowercase false could be a string. It could be a variable name. It could be something else, but it's not a Boolean. The only Boolean values are uppercase f false and uppercase t true. And I said, I realized at the end that was something everybody either got instantly or just missed. 14, the index of the last element in the list scores in Python. There were actually 2 correct answers. Okay. Length of scores, no, because there is no element length of scores. That's 1 too many. Okay, because you start at 0. Length of scores -1 is indeed the index of the last element. And remember, you can just abbreviate that with -1. Okay, so either scores sub -1 or scores sub length of scores -1. Both of those will give you the correct index, and so the answer to question 14 is both B and C are correct answers. And the last, true and false, if you're indenting the code in a while loop using spaces instead of tabs, you must indent the code at least 4 spaces. That is false. 1 space is sufficient. I mentioned that in class a couple of times. 1 space is sufficient. I went ahead and used this question because, I mean, it was an open book test. You had access to PyCharm. You could have really quick opened PyCharm and typed 1 sentence, 1 space yourself and see if it had worked. And again, I think most people got that. I was really pleased with the grades on the test. As I mentioned on Monday, there were only a couple that were below a B. Most people either got an A or a B, and we were pretty much split below then. So there were a couple of C's, mostly A's and B's. I was pleased. That was okay. Write a Python program that first creates an empty list called numbers and then uses a for I loop to append the integers 100 through 90 to that list in order. Most people got that one pretty quickly. There were a couple of ways to do it. First of all, to create the empty list, you do that. Second of all, Now, there's a couple of different ways to do it using for I. I was looking for something like this, although you didn't lose any points if you did it differently. Range 189 minus 1, numbers dot append I. And that is sufficient. That is, and did I ask you to print it out? Let me look. I don't remember if I need to put a print statement in there. No. Okay, that code is sufficient to get full credit for that question. That's all you have to do. Things to watch out for. A couple of people lost 1 point. Again, I'm pretty generous in partial credit if you're trying, if you're making a good effort. A couple of people lost 1 point because they said 90, not 89. Remember that with a for I loop, this value is not executed. So if you say this, then the number 90 will not be appended to the list. If you're going to do it this way, you have to say 89. Now, another way to do the same thing, there were people who said for I in range 1 to 12, numbers dot append 101 minus I. That also works. Perfectly valid, completely accepted. Anything that gave the correct value, the correct response, that list of 100 through 90 in order, in that way, 199, 98, etc., is valid. But this is really all you needed to do to get full credit for that. And again, most people did well. The second programming question, most people did pretty well, unless apparently you just didn't understand it. There were a few people who apparently didn't understand it and didn't try, which please try. Give it a shot. Start writing code, see what happens. Again, it's an open book exam. Presuming you have the 90 minutes, you can pull up PyCharm and see if what you're writing will work or not. It's okay. In this class, because we're online, that's okay. So you're asked the user for 2 Boolean values and prints out the exclusive OR. You cannot use, Python has a built-in XOR. You couldn't use it. That's fine. Again, this is fairly simple. Okay. A equals input. I need a Boolean. Enter true or false. Remember, it's coming in as a string, so I have to convert it to Boolean. And I told you you didn't, or if you asked, I told you you didn't have to do any input validation. You didn't have to make sure that anything was done. Now, to do the exclusive OR, then you simply do this. If A, I'll do it this way, equals true, and B, okay, if A is equal to true and B is equal to false, and I'll use parentheses to make it clear. Or A is equal to false and B is equal to true. In those two cases, then XOR equals true, else XOR equals false. And let me double check the assignment that I didn't shortcut anything. Yeah. Oh, and I need a print statement. That's what I answered. So now I just need print the exclusive OR value Okay. And again, that is a sufficient Python program to get full credit for this one. Okay. So on these tests, because we're in class, because you only have 90 minutes, they're not going to involve tons and tons of code. It's a matter of thinking through it. You can use PyCharm to debug it, to test it out, but go through. Again, for most of the people, you got almost full credit or full credit. If you didn't ask the user for the two things, A and B, then you lost a couple of points. If you didn't print out, then you lost, I think, 1 point, and the rest of it was just something along here. Now, there are any number of things you could have done to implement this logic, right? I said if A equals true, it would be equals false, or A equals false and B equals true. You could use nested if statements. If A equals true, if B equals false, blah, blah, etc. You could have done the nested if statements. That was perfectly acceptable. A couple of people did. All we're looking for is that you can figure out how to represent this logic. The last part of the test was the debugging. Just checking there's no questions in the chat. There are a number of errors in here, several of which I intentionally put in and a couple of which were typos, but you got full credit for them anyway. Ignore the comments. Misspellings in comments are not syntax errors because Python ignores comments. I didn't put any intentional typos in the comments, but if there was one, you won't worry about it. Okay, let's start with the code. First thing, line 4, print statement string, start with a double quote, end with a single quote. So the first error you could have identified is in line 4. What I was looking for is that you had mismatched double and single quotes, and the way to fix it is either to make them both double or both single. Either one would fix it. You get credit if you did that. There's one. The next error, let's see. 5, I think, is okay. 6, there is a problem right here. There is not a closing quote for the double quote to match this. There's one missing. So you could say that there was an error in line 6, a syntax error. There's a missing double quote. Fix it by putting it in there. 6A, there were too many errors when I left out points. Points equals 0. We put it in there. That's fine. 7, while grade is not equal to little q and grade not equal to, there's an equal sign missing right here in line 7. That's supposed to be not equal, exclamation point equal. So there's a missing equal sign. You can put it there. While not grade in the uppercase and not grade in the lowercase. Print an error message. Sorry, that's not a valid grade. Grade equals input. Enter your next grade now. And then we loop. So that's the end of that while loop. If grade is an A, points plus equal 4. Now here, like I said, I went back and inserted statement 6A is there because I inserted points equals 0 to assign it. That's fine. If grade equal B or grade equal little b, that's fine. Points plus equal 3. If grade in capital or little c, points minus equal 2. If you pointed out that minus equals is an error, you got credit for that. You didn't know that was a semantic error. It seems, though, that since we're always adding points for everything else, subtracting 2 points for a C is probably not what we intended. So you got a point if you said there's this error minus equals in 16, it should be plus equals. If grade equals D, points plus equal 1, else points plus equal 0, num courses plus equal 1. Wait a minute. Okay, num courses has not been seen before. So when you try to do plus equals, you get an error right here that says, I don't know what variable num courses is. I can't add 1 to it. That's also an error. your grade is points divided by num courses. Couple of different errors here. One, there's an extraneous double quote here. That was actually a typo. I didn't intend to put that error in there, but if you pointed out that there's an extraneous double quote in line 22, you got credit. That's an error. The other thing is I gave you again credit. Num courses, it wasn't defined here. It would actually give you another error here because it's still not defined. So if you pointed that out, I also gave you credit for that one. So those were all the errors I know of. And I think everybody, again, most people got that. There were a couple of minor issues. If you have questions about it, let me know. But that was the answer to the exam. Those were the answers I was looking for in the exam. Exam 2 and the final, the plan is they will be very similar. They will be in class. Exam 2 will be about the same length, worth the same number of points. The final will be worth more points, and it'll be 2 full hours, but everything will work the same. So hopefully you're good to that. If you have questions about your grade, or if you have questions about the test, wait till the end of lecture, and I'll be happy to do them. We've got a lot of stuff we need to cover today. If you have questions about your grade, ping me privately, and I'll be happy to talk about it, and we'll go through. Okay, so that was the test. I did want to cover that again. Apologies for messing up Blackboard and not getting that Monday, but we got it today. The next thing I wanted to talk about is homework 5, because this is going to be tricky for people. I put it out on the class GitHub today. It's on the GitHub under assignments. It is due next Wednesday night, so you have a full week plus about 8 hours to do it. It is worth 50 points. If you're looking at the majors class homework assignments, this is similar to what they're doing. You will not do section 4, problem 4 in the major section. If you look at the majors homework and plan on doing that one, that's a great start, but you don't have to do problem 4, because problem 4 talks about Python dictionaries. We will not have covered Python dictionaries in time. So that problem is just thrown out. You will do sections 1, 2, 3, and 5, and it'll still be worth 50 points. And I'll talk to Tommy and Jeff and figure out the points allocation. It'll probably be 15, 15, 10, and 10. But I want to walk through what you need to do. There's a list, by the way, of coding standards, things you should use, things you are allowed. Let me touch on this. You should only use Python constructs that we have covered in class. There are some things that people have started to use in homework that you should not use, either because you're getting ahead or because they are very bad and you should not use them. In general, the break and the continue statement in loops should never be used in this class. In 201, break and continue should not be used. If someone helps you, if you find an answer that uses break and continue, please do not use it. Come to office hours for help, since it's many of the same problems as the majors. Any TA can help, in addition to Jeff and Tommy. Find a solution that doesn't use break and continue. Don't use methods outside those permitted. Keyword things, example. These are things not to use. If you have any questions, let me know. All right. We've tried to characterize each problem as to how hard or easy it is. So I want to give you some advice. Problem 1, we think, frankly, it's hard. It's doing some manipulation with genes. It's doing some DNA with the codons and figuring out how to do them. And so probably best to start with section 5. Okay, section 1, I'll come back and I'll explain how it works and what you need to do, but it's hard. So I would, if I were you, hold off problem 1 on homework 5 till last. Problem 2 is medium. It's really not that bad. It's between easy and medium. I don't think it's that difficult for you. Basically, you are building Pascal's triangle. If you're not familiar with Pascal's triangle, a quick Google will tell you what it looks like. You build it simply by combining numbers. It's this thing here that looks like this pyramid or triangle of numbers, and you notice that every number is the sum of the two above it. You start with 1, then 1, 1, then 1 and 1 is 2. You always add a 1 at the outside to make each new row one bigger than the last one. And so you're just going to write functions that build this triangle and prints it out row by row. For every row, you add a 1 at the beginning, you add a row at the last. Well, you know how to add a 1 at the last, just append it. Insert a 1 at the beginning. Everything else just comes from adding the 2 above it. It's actually a fairly straightforward thing. 3 is also hard. It's implementing a vacuum cleaner and how it's going to work. We're skipping 4. You do not have to do 4. And 5, I don't know why we made this 5. We just did, is the easiest. So bluntly, my recommendation to you is do problem 5 of the homework first, then do problem 2, and then you can get into 1 and 3, whichever you think is easier or harder. Now, let me give you an example of what you're supposed to do. For each of these homework problems, you will see that we give you a file that contains part of the code. We're trying to guide you into how you do this. Okay, so you go to GL and you copy this. Now, let me see. I'm supposed to be sharing my terminal with you. This is a terminal window on my Mac. I'm logged into GL. Okay, this is a terminal window. What I have done is I have copied one of the files. This is for problem 1 that we give you as the starter code. When you download it and then you go into Emacs, it will look like this. Okay, it will have parameters. It will have constants declared. These are all caps. They're constants. We give you the outline of a function. Now, Monday, I didn't do a really good job with functions. Today, I'm going to try to do a better job with functions. But we give you the outline of a function. Remember that a function starts with DEF. DEF means I'm defining a function. The function is called extract genes. Extract genes takes one parameter. That is sequence. We'll look at what sequence is. It's actually going to be a list of characters. Now, we tell you right here in the pseudocode, this function should return a list of genes that start with the start codon and end with one of the 3 stop codons. The parameter coming in as a sequence is a string of nucleotides. The return is a list. Okay, so sequence is a string. We tell you that sequence is a string coming in, and we want you to have a return of some variable that is a list of genes. Okay, pass, don't worry about pass. Pass keeps the program from crashing if you try to run it. That just returns back. You don't need it. We give you the main program. So the main program starts, has an input statement. How many codons do you want to create? You're going to get a value from the user. You're going to check to see, you're going to run a while loop, and it's going to execute some logic. So what you are going to do for this is you are going to write the code that fills in this particular function that we give you. Okay. All right, so that's basically what you're going to do with each problem of the 4 you're going to do. We give you a file with a sample input and a description of what has to go there, and you have to fill into the file. So that is homework 5. It's not due till next Wednesday night. It's not due Monday night. It's due Wednesday night, and we can talk about it Wednesday. And of course, there's office hours and questions and everything else. If you've looked at the majors homework 5, do not do problem 4. Problem 4 involves Python dictionaries. We haven't covered them. You're not responsible. Okay. That is homework 5.
Professor, can you?
Yeah. Now that I've done that, I want to actually go to this afternoon's lecture and talk about functions, and hopefully, having prepared better than I did on Monday, hopefully be able to give you a better explanation and some better examples of what we're doing. The term scope, and I actually put this in the lecture twice. You will see in the homework some terms, some discussion, and also I believe in the lab you're doing some description of scope. The scope of a variable means where the variable can be directly seen and used. Okay. So if you define a variable in the main program, it can be seen and used everywhere in the program, but that's very bad programming style. You should only directly use something in the main program if you need that value as a function, pass it as an argument. If you use it directly, that's called a global variable, and we discourage that. It's a bad habit. So I'll talk about that when I get into some of the coding examples we're going to have. When you see the word scope, scope means where is this defined? Okay. Let me jump ahead now to our factorial case. Okay. I don't want that. I want PyCharm. Okay. Skipping all the stuff from the exam. I'm going to write a function which calculates the factorial of any number. It's going to take one parameter, which is a positive integer, and it's going to return and I'm going to return that number factorial. Num fact, if you wanted to. Okay, so here is my code. Product is going to be initialized to 1 for I in range of num. Product. Where's my times button? Times equal num. Return product. I don't need the parentheses around product on the return statement. It is my habit to put them there. This would work perfectly fine if I just said return space product. Doesn't matter. Main program. Number equals 6. Yeah, we'll get it from the user. Number equals 6. Now I want to call factorial, and I have to use the uppercase F because it has to match. I'm going to put this number somewhere. So I'm going to say that fact equals the function factorial of number. Now I'm going to print the result. Number factorial is fact. Okay. If I haven't made any typos, this code will run and tell me that 6 factorial is equal to 720. Okay, that is clearly an error because 6 factorial is not 46,656. Let's see what I did. Oh, back to my code. Okay. It looks like I did it right. What did I do wrong? Here we go. Hang on. Product equal 1. I arrange num. Factorial number. Put a couple of debugging statements. So much for prepping. Here we go. Okay, here we go. So the first thing I printed out was 6, and that tells me that num has the value of 6, which it's supposed to have. 6, 36. Silly, silly, silly. Please tell me somebody told me in chat what my error was. This is not supposed to equal times num. It's supposed to be times I. All I'm doing is this way is calculating 6 to the first, 6 squared, 6 cubed, 6 whatever. That is supposed to be I. That was my mistake. Okay. Let's fix that. Now, please tell me that 6 factorial is 720. No, I still did it wrong. What did I do wrong this time? Okay, you're confused on where. Hang on. Oh, sure. Okay, no problem. The given code in the homework. Gotcha. Not a problem. We can do that. Okay, let me make a trying to fix this. Put Oh, I didn't copy worth a darn. Sorry. Okay. One more. Silly bug. Okay. Hey, I can actually calculate a factorial. Okay. So the bottom line on this, what I wanted to say is here, again, reminder, the return statement says this is the value that comes back when the function ends. Now, syntactically, I personally put them in parentheses. A lot of other people don't. If you said return product, that works fine. Okay, just as well, either one. When I'm talking about scope, values, variables that are defined here in the function are only known in the function. If I, in the main program, tried to add a statement that says print product, and I run the code, this error is not defined. Product is not defined. The reason is product is defined in the function. The scope of product is only the function in which it's defined. The scope of num is only the function in which it's defined. Okay, so that's what we say scope. When you define something in a function, it is only known and can only be used in the function. You can't use it anywhere else. Now, just for kicks and grins, I'm going to show you the other way. Notice that number is defined in the main program. Number is defined down here. Number is not defined in factorial. There's no definition. There's no assignment. Number is not the parameter. It's actually the argument. We're getting the value of the parameter through the argument, but number is not defined here. Yet, even though number is not defined in the function, okay, even though number is not defined in the function, I can still access it. The reason is if it's defined in the main program, it has global scope. It's a global variable. A global variable is something you define in the main program and you use it in the function without passing it as an argument or parameter. That's a global variable. So the way Python works, getting back to the slides finally, is the variable in the main program is known in the function. It has global scope, but you should not use it. It just leads to a lot of really bad programming errors, a lot of things that are hard to fix. However, if it's defined in the function, then it only has local scope. You cannot use it, as we saw in the main program when I tried to print out product. Product doesn't exist in the main program. So local scope, local variables defined in the function, they can only be used in the functions. You cannot use them anywhere else. Those are local variables. Main program variables are global. You can use them in the functions, but please don't. Return statement, we've talked about that. If I want to write a function that calculates the fourth root of a number, the fourth root of a number is that number raised to the 1/4 power. I'll just copy this. Yeah. Sorry, I have to fix that one. 1/4. Okay, let's try this again. Okay, here I find that the fourth root of 81 is 3. In fact, because 3 to the 4th power is 81. So here we just use a function. We had a return. The return in this case happened to be an integer. Okay. Here I've got a function. How am I doing on time since I took so long? 25 minutes. I should have plenty of time to get through the things I want to get through. I'll leave some time at the end for more talking about homework 5. I'm going to define a function that's going to reverse a word. Okay, it's going to take in a string, a word, and it's not going to return anything in PyChart. Okay, let me fix my quotes. Okay, let me see. This is my function. I'm missing a colon. Okay. Remember how I said that you can't change a letter or a string letter by letter, but you can access a string letter by letter. In this case, that's what we're doing. We're accessing a string letter by letter and putting it in a new variable, a new string, and putting it in letter by letter. Okay, we do not return anything. Let's try reversing UMBC. Yep. Okay. What did I do here? Let's see. Guess what I forgot to do? I forgot to increment my variable, and thus I built myself a nice, simple, infinite loop. Now let's see what I did. Okay. That's interesting. I didn't reverse word UMBC. Let's see. Because I am going the wrong way. Length of word minus 1 minus I. Okay. How about that? It worked. There we go. So this is how we have a function. This is a long way around to go it and say the function does all of its work locally in the function. There is no return statement here. So when you have a function, you do not have to return anything to use the program. Maybe it'd be more useful if the function did return a value. Maybe I should actually return the reversed word. To do that, I would just do this. I would add a return statement reversed word. And now let's comment that out. And let's set a list of words, animals equal the list of dog, cat, cow, chicken. For critter in animals, use a for loop. Print reverse word of critter. Okay. Okay, and this you can see now goes through and reverses each word, so it returns it. So the point I'm trying to make in this one is the previous version of the function did all of its work locally and returned nothing. Here's a version where we did return a word, and now we can use that in the main program because it returned it. So when you're writing your function, think about what you want to do with the value of the return, the value the function calculates, and whether you need to return it or not, or how to return it. Functions that return nothing typically are what we call helper functions. They do something like print a specific message or do something like that. You will have some cases where a function does not return anything, and that's legitimate, that's what you want. But think about it when you're building your code. You can have more than one return statement in a function. Okay, but here's the rule. Python stops executing a function once it executes a return statement. So if I went back to the fourth root function and said, okay, here's the fourth root, calculate the number to the input to the 1/4 power and return that. Now I can put all the code I want to in the function after that, and it's never going to be executed. It doesn't hurt. Well, as soon as this return statement is executed, the function stops, and this print statement will never be executed. I'm not going to bother because I'm running low on time. I'm not going to bother demonstrating, but you can actually verify the code. If you fix the 1/4 character to be 101/4, you'll see that this actually does work with this never being executed. Where does this come in handy? When you are writing your function, you may have conditionals. You may have if statements. And what happens is you may say, if this is negative, return. Just we're done. Otherwise, do this. So for example, if you write a function to do your user input, all of your user input, instead of being in the main program, may be in a function. And you will say, please enter a number between 1 and 10. And then while the number entered is not between 1 and 10, you will continue to ask for input. If the number is between 1 and 10, you'll return right there. And so that's a way you can legitimately have a case that says, if the number is between 1 and 10, return now. Otherwise, print this error message and continue looking for more inputs. So you will sometimes have conditionals where you'll have returns in the middle of a code or multiple different returns. The bottom line is, as soon as you hit a return, your function stops executing. Anything after that in the function is ignored. Again, this print statement is never going to be executed. How to use it in the main program? We've shown that already with the last example. You take the list of animals, you calculate it, the animal name reversed, you pass it back, the main program prints it out. So you can use the return value just like the function name itself. The only place you can't use the return value is on the left side of the assignment statement. The left side of an assignment statement, the left side of the equals, has to be like a variable name. You can't put a returned value there as the variable name. Python will not allow it. When you do not return a value, you either have a return statement with nothing or you have no return statement. Python has a special term for that, a special value. The value is none. Uppercase N, lowercase O-N-E. None. A function that doesn't return anything, Python says returns none. And none is of a special value type in Python called none type. The only thing that is of type none type is none. So just like Booleans only have true and false, none type only has none. So if your function returns nothing, has no return, then it returns none, and none is of none type. You will see this over and over, unfortunately, in your programming, because things will happen where you are expecting the function to return a value and it doesn't. And then you'll try to do something with the returned value. And you will see an error that looks exactly or similar to this. Error type none type is not iterable. What this means is you thought you were returning a list, and you were then going to do something with the list when you got it back from the function. And so you tried to go through the elements of a list. And Python told you, I don't have a list, I have none. And none is of type none type, and you can't do anything with it. So therefore, Python will tell you something like type none type is not iterable. When you see this error, what this means is you thought you were getting back a list. You didn't get back a list, you got back none. And you can't do list-like things with none. So you will see that a lot. If you see none type, that means you return none. You generally have trouble unless you're using it for error checking. Okay. Your main program can check to see if the returned value is none. Okay. You can look for it. You can have return none or return a no. You can look for the value none, and if the value is not none, then you can continue on with your code. And if the value is none, you can print out an error message or do something that indicates, hey, we got none back. So you can look at that. But typically, the only thing you'll ever actually use none for intentionally is error checking. And here's an example of that with our fourth root. In our main program, we say original number is a float, input, enter a number. We're not done while we're not done. Final number is fourth root of the original number. If final number is not equal to none, now there's no quotes, right? There's no single quotes or double quotes around none because none is not a string. It's like capital TRUE and capital FALSE. Those are specific reserved words in Python. NONE, capital N, is a reserved word in Python. It is a specific value. So I can check to see, is my final number none? Final number is what was returned from my function fourth root. My function fourth root is over here. If fourth root returned none, then all I'm going to do is I'm going to print out an error message that said we were serious about needing a non-negative number. You entered an invalid number. We couldn't calculate it, so the function returned none. So we did some error checking and printed out a message. Okay. If the final number is not none, hey, if the final value of the function is not none, then it worked, and I can go ahead and do the printing. If I tried to print this out and none was returned, I'd get an error message. My program would crash. So this is how you would use none to do error checking. Sometimes you'll have to do that in Python. A little bit on memory. You can use the same identifier in different functions because of scope, because of the way Python calls things. If you use an identifier in the main program and then identifiers in the local routine. Let's try this in plain English. I apologize. Identifiers that are local variables in the function are different locations in memory than the ones for the main program. Remember I said Python has a symbol table. Symbol table is where variable names are stored along with a link to where in memory the value of that variable is. So if I had my main program that had the value, that had the variable critter here in the main program, I had a variable critter. Python creates an entry the symbol table for critter, a link to a location in memory. And so in memory for the main program, there is something called critter that we know where to find. In the function, I use the parameter word. Word is mapped to critter. Critter was the argument right here. Word is the parameter. What Python does is Python creates a new location in memory or a new part of memory only for the function. So anything defined in the function is in a new location in memory that is not the same location in memory as the main program. Then Python establishes a link. Python says the parameter in the function is word. The argument in the main program is critter. We will pass the value that's in critter to this location word. Python creates the link between these two locations in memory, but they are not the same location in memory. If you want to use the term, this is almost true, Python passes by value. It calls by value. It does not pass the location in memory. It passes, in most cases, this is going to be true, it passes the value. Okay, so that means that things you do in the function may not impact the main program because you're doing things with different locations in memory. This is why local variables can work. This is why if you have something else in the main program, it can't access what's in the function because the function has its own block of memory. This is more on scope. Just wanted to summarize what we've talked about there. And I'm going to skip importing modules and functions because Python, I want to talk about homework 5 again based on the question. Python lets you, as we've said, and we've had in some homeworks, Python has a lot of code libraries out there. Those code libraries have functions that have already been written. When you import them into your homework, when you import them into your program, you use those functions that are already written and they're don't therefore have to be written again. And so the rest of the slides just have some examples, but I want to put those off because I'm running low on time and I want to get. Sorry, muted myself. I wanted to get back to the questions about homework 5 since that's going to be an issue with you and I've only got 5 minutes left. So all these slides are available on GitHub. And I may talk a little bit more about them Monday. They're mostly background. They kind of explain when we have this code that we're importing in our homeworks, we're bringing in these libraries, we're using functions. These are existing functions that are out there that have parameters, and you just have to give them the right argument. And so that's just to illustrate that. I don't want that either in PyCharm. I want my terminal. Let's go to my terminal. Let's see if I can get out of Emacs. Where am I? Okay. All right. There, we're out of Emacs. So let's see. Here we are in, I believe I'm on GL. Yes, I am. What you are supposed to do with these homeworks is let's create a new directory called homework 5 in your homework directory on GL. Let's move into homework 5. Let's print working directory to make sure that we are still there. Okay, what you are supposed to do then is copy each of those homework files for each of the parts. So let's do part 5. Copy / AFS, Andrew File System, umbc.edu / users Eric 8 pub. Let me go back to homework 5 and get the right. Part 5 is Eric 8 pub CS 201 fall 20. Here we go. CS 201 fall 20. HW5 part 5 starter.py, and I'm going to copy that to HW5 part 5.py. I'll call it that. Okay, make sure it's there. I have homework 5 part 5.py. So this is the starter code that I've copied in when I'm working on part 5, the reverse code. Now let's look at what that is. Let me see how long it is. Let's see if I can cat it first. We can see that it has a number of functions. It has some constants defined for us. It has some functions laid out: swap, find max index after, and reverse selection sort. These are the functions you're going to have to write. So when you're doing part 5, you're going to come in and write each of these functions. And it'll tell you what it does. So when you write swap, you're going to take in a list that we're reverse sorting. You're going to take in the first position to swap and the second position to swap. You have to write code that will change list element I to list element J and vice versa. Now, bluntly, the easiest way to do that is just to create a temporary variable, call it X, set X equal to list sub I, set list sub I equal to list sub J, and set list sub J equal to X. If you didn't follow that, don't worry about it. It's simply a matter of swapping variables. Take whatever's in I, put it in your new variable X. Take whatever's in J, put it in I. Then take whatever was held in X to J, and you have now swapped I and J. Okay, and then you're going to return the modified list. You're going to return the modified list, and that's all you're going to do for swap. That's your code. Now, you have to do a little bit more than that. You have to put comments. You have to explain what you're doing. But that's really all that is in swap. Find max index. Basically, you're going to go through to clarify, it is not the highest level index. It is the index of the biggest value. So what you are looking for here is find the index of the element with the biggest value. So when you write this function, what it's going to do is it's going to start at the beginning of the list. It's going to find the biggest element. Okay, that's just compare each element to the biggest one so far. And it's going to return the index where, what is the index of the biggest value? If the biggest value is in the list sub 10, it's going to return 10. If the biggest value is in the list sub 25, it's going to return 25. It's going to return the index of the biggest value that you found. And then reverse selection sort is going to use find max index and swap to sort the elements in the list. Every time you're going to go through the list, find the biggest value, swap it so that it's the beginning of the list, and then move on with the rest of the list. So you're going to write this code, you're going to write this code, and you're going to write this code, and it says your code should end here. That's all you're going to write. The main program is already written for you. That's all you have to do for part 5. right, is figure out what code to write for swap that does this, what code to write for find max index that does this, what code to write for reverse selection sort that does that. So that is what's going on for homework 5, part 5. You're going to fill in those codes. So the same idea works for all of the other sections that you're going to do, right? In homework in part 1, you're going to download that file, and it's going to tell you what function you're going to have to write. And that was what I had up at the beginning. I don't know if you saw it, but basically there's one function you have to write. The rest of the stuff, it's copy it to your homework 5 directory using the CP command, just like I did on GL, like I showed you. It's a CP statement. Copy that file into your account. The warning here is that this command wraps around. So if you try to use this, if you try to copy this from the homework, you're going to be missing something. So this is just a warning that this stuff all wraps around, and it should go, this all should go on one line on GL. Okay. And then 2 and 3 work the same way. Again, my recommendation to you, 5 is the easiest part. It's the easiest thing to do. 2 is next. 2 is not much more difficult than 5. Work on 5 and 2. Then go to 1 and 3 because they're a little harder. If you start on 1, you may beat your head against the wall trying to get it done and waste a lot of time. Don't do that. Build up your confidence by getting 5 working and by getting 3 working, or 2 working, 5 and 2 working, and then go to 3 and 5. Talk to the TAs, talk to me, office hours, Discord. Please do not use the things listed in the assignment as forbidden. If you heaven forbid, you can probably find a solution to this on the internet. If you find a solution to the internet to this on the internet, you're not allowed to use it. That's called cheating. It violates academic integrity. And if you find a solution on the internet and submit it and it has things like break and continue, that's really bad because we told you you can't use them. So that's just, get help. You have until next Wednesday. You have a full week plus now 7 hours to do this. It's really not that hard once you wrap your head around what you're trying to do. And I will talk about this again on Monday. Please have started this by Monday. Please don't come to class on Monday not having started this. Start it, because we're going to get into programming assignment number 1 fairly quickly. Probably I'll assign it next week. So let's get done with this homework. It's not too bad. I understand it's a lot harder to wrap your head around. That being said, I think I am over time. I've kept you too long. I appreciate your patience. If you have questions about your test grade, if I made a mistake and gave you credit I should not have given you, just be quiet. It's done. It's over. I don't want to hear about it. If I took points away that I should not have taken away, then by all means, I'm willing to regrade. I'm willing to reconsider. If you have more questions, that's fine. Homework, lab. Hopefully, I know you work on the lab, which has functions. Hopefully, my explanation of functions and returns and things like that helped you more with the lab. I'm available if you have questions of that. And at that point, I've got to duck out for a meeting, but I'll be available later on. If you need me, ping me privately. Thank you all, and apologies for keeping you an extra 5 minutes. Thanks a lot.